Firstly, gents, thanks for joining us. How are we all?
I'm doing great. How are you, Owen?
Mate, tired after that, I have to say. I'm tired after 3 intros, but look, we'll get into it. We've got a little bit of time. We've got about 20 minutes. We're going to be talking about how to thrive in the current market. Quite a broad topic because what does the current market look like and how to thrive in it could be very varied. But just going to throw some questions at you. Let's see where this goes. And Ali, I might bring you into the conversation first, if that's okay. And I'd just be keen to see, from your perspective, from Zoom-In's info standpoint, what are some of the current challenges that you're seeing in the market that maybe didn't exist 12 months ago?
So Owen, I suppose firstly, thank you so much for having me on the panel. It's a pleasure to be here. And excited to talk about this particular topic. I think, as you pointed out, talking about the current climate, I mean, there's a huge amount to unpack in that statement. So I think really when you kind of think about breaking this down, there are going to be various different things that are very stable across what challenges the team face. But then there are obviously the nuances, like we've just come out of a pandemic and getting figured out how to use virtual meetings to be able to replace in-person meetings as well. But as we kind of start seeing that as almost like a new normal now, I think really what we're trying to figure out is that particularly in my space, when you're looking at enterprise deals, is really trying to create a process or a framework that salespeople can thrive within, to be able to maximize the output and the efficiencies, because it's a very always switched on culture that we can tend to get eaten up into. So I think really that's where we need to kind of focus a lot of our time, is about how to teach our sales team to switch off and when to switch on, and ensuring that they can thrive within the parameters that we give them.
Yeah, I love that. Chris, I'll come over to you. What about you? Are there any new challenges you guys are seeing?
I wouldn't say new challenges. I think there's new challenges every day, as you know, in terms of ensuring we're thriving, and that sort of word is sort of even infers it's an always on challenge to thrive and to keep driving towards success. I think most that work in high growth SaaS businesses, they're very familiar with the pace of business and obviously the pace of change that is coming always tomorrow. You know, shameless plug to kind of link back to what I was talking about earlier on. I think that, you know, fundamentally my views sort of they sort of come across a number of different themes, but you know, I think there were some really great sessions earlier on around the importance of like coaching and culture, and a lot of that I think Andy will probably be far more expert in kind of talking to in terms of the metrics. But you know, my session earlier on was talking about the growing importance of revenue operations, and importantly there was another session following that around metrics. And I think actually any sales leader, any business leader in the SaaS world that's burying their head in the sand around thriving, not really necessarily knowing where they're going, it is going to face a lot of challenges, both short and long term. I suppose the best way I always look at it is if you look at the best run high growth SaaS companies, they've typically got an event that they're aiming for, which is an IPO or a acquisition or a sale. And the closer you get to that event, the more metrics that start to get deployed in front of you by the investors and by those that are leading you to that promised land. But actually worrying about that at the end of the game, rather than actually starting with thinking about that now, is a really, really important thing to establish within any business to ensure you ultimately will thrive today and tomorrow.
Love it. And Andy, it feels like you guys, I'm sure you have, but it looks like you haven't had any challenges in the way you guys have been going. It's been incredible to watch your journey over the last couple of years, but I guess there have been some challenges that we might not see on the outside.
Yeah, you know, it's a really funny thing for me, because I have this great privilege of getting to speak to lots and lots and lots of sales teams all the time. And one of the things that really stands out to me is the difference in mindset that comes across. And this is not the first time I've seen this, where I would speak to one organization, they're flying, you know, everything's going brilliantly well. I mean, the data's there to support us as well, like Salesforce 20% up year on year, Snowflake 28% up year on year, AWS is 25% up year on year, Azure's over 50% year on year. So the SaaS industry is thriving if you look at those data points. So I would speak to some people and they would be seeing those numbers as well. And then I'd have conversations with others and they're not performing, and they would be putting the performance down to the climate. And I think we've seen this, you know, I think back to a round table dinner thing I was at years ago, maybe 3 or 4 years ago, and the table was literally split in half over Brexit. Half the people at the table were saying that, you know, business is bad and Brexit's to blame. The other half were saying Brexit. I'd almost forgot that was the thing. And so I'm going to be the person that's going to take like the positive perspective here. And I think that, sure, there are definitely challenges at the moment. We're seeing that, and there's nothing worse that can happen in business than people to be laid off. That's the worst thing that can happen. But I think, like, if you look, there is definitely positivity out there, and there's definitely growth going on out there as well. So I'd like to look at that.
It's a really interesting point around that mindset. And, you know, you choose the camp you sit in, and usually you ride your luck depending on the mindset that you take into the next day all the time. I'm going to come to Chris first on this one because I'm conscious of doing the same order around and around. So I'll mix it up a little bit. Chris, for you guys at the moment, are there specific areas of focus when it comes to growth over the next, say, 3, 6, 9, 12 months that you're looking at? Are there particular opportunities that exist and that other people should be considering?
I think there's a very personal one that I'm conscious of every day, which is hopefully practicing what I preach, but has a benefit. And it's, for me, maintaining togetherness, because, you know, again, the pandemic taught us a lot of things about, you know, suddenly everyone being dispersed back into their homes and their changing working behaviours. But actually, many people have not actually yet returned back to the office to any mode of operation yet that feels like it used to. So the biggest challenge is actually maintaining that togetherness and you know, linked very closely to culture. And for me, it's very easy when you're trying to drive future creativity, trying to create systems of abundance, trying to create, you know, the opportunity for everyone to thrive, that you don't just disappear and see others follow you down that path, because it's very easy to end up isolating yourself and isolating a lot of your team. So I work a lot on trying to maintain togetherness, finding opportunities to connect, finding opportunities to really hit home and drive not just the culture I want to see, but a better culture tomorrow as well. Because, you know, I think that comes back to in the real world in selling, not running from the front lines and not running away to busy yourself with numbers and spreadsheets and regular calls to analyze data in various different ways that you'll often need to at a senior leadership level to ensure there's confidence at investor and senior leadership level. But there's a real delicate balance that I'd finish on there, which is maintaining that culture, creating that togetherness, you know, not running away from the front lines. Also has to be backed up by, you don't just want to become a busy fool and end up doing everything for everyone. That ultimately culminates in you owning too much of the deliverables and not actually too much of charting the course to success. And so the summary of that is coaching as opposed to doing, and also making sure you're present with your team whenever they need them. And those are the things that, outside of all of the other stuff, really matter. They really make a difference, in my opinion.
Love that notion of togetherness. Ali, I'll come to you. I guess same question. Are there specific areas of growth that you're focused on more at the moment than maybe other areas?
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple of points there. Firstly, I think I really echo Chris's point around bringing togetherness into that. And the way that we're looking to try and execute that as an international team of an American business, we really started to put boots on the ground only very recently in terms of putting more headcount and teams in place in the UK to service the EMEA markets. And when you have that newness in a business, there's already an incredible amount of excitement that is created. So it's really about fostering that culture that of everyone wanting to learn together. I think as part of that process, to Chris's point around not doing it alone, we had an all hands yesterday, internal all hands, where Henry was speaking specifically about never always winning together and never losing alone. So, and it was a really profound statement, because when you think about that, in a sales team, we tend to focus on trying to get everything done ourselves, because there might be a view that you're not doing it correctly if you ask for help. And actually, that's a culture that we really need to cultivate across all sales teams, because it really does take a village, particularly when you are selling complex sales software. So when we instill that type of behaviors into our teams, we are teaching them that we work together, and that ultimately organically builds culture throughout the team, and it creates an ecosystem for people to thrive within. And for us to be able to have that, that's a hard part of the problem that can't really be defined with a specific element to solve for it. With things like metrics and so forth, that's something very easily measurable that we can kind of, if we apply the right metrics to model, we can then apply that to the cultural elements that we're looking to drive. So across the next 3 to 6 months, our focus, particularly in the EMEA business, is to really continue to grow and build that togetherness that Chris talks about, but do it in a way that enables our teams to learn from those various different aspects as we go through the various sales cycles as well.
Andy, over to you.
Yeah, I love what the guys are saying there about togetherness, culture, that kind of thing. For me, this is a weird phenomenon we have in sales, where we think success is this binary thing, right? You win a deal, success; you lost a deal, it's a failure, right? And that doesn't happen in any other profession, right? Think about our friends in marketing. They will celebrate a campaign. They'll celebrate an inbound. They'll celebrate an event registration. They'll right the way through to the event itself and all that kind of stuff, right? And so for me, one of the things that I think we should do more as a leadership team, as sales teams, is celebrate all the successes that happen over the course of a sales cycle as a team. Because if you want to talk about togetherness and culture, and you want everyone pulling in the same direction, then there's no better way to get everyone behind the same goal. And so for me, it's like, someone's booked a meeting with an ideal customer profile. Let's celebrate that the same way we would if we'd won the deal, right? Maybe not quite as much. Maybe we're not going to slam a gong every time we do one small thing, but let's build the culture where teammates see someone else doing something good and they feel obliged to share that, because not only is it good positivity, but it's also a lot of the time best practice that we can all benefit from. Our industry doesn't have a curriculum, doesn't have a university course. It's all built up of us trial and error and building up best practices that we all contribute towards. So let's share more of that. That's my big thing at the moment.
I love that. It really links me nicely into my next question, which you kind of all touched on a little bit, which is, what are you doing at the moment to keep sales teams motivated, and how has that evolved in the last couple of years? Feels like you've all focused on that togetherness and that human connection to some degree, and also on this celebrating the small things, or what could be deemed to be the small things. So I was interested. I was in an interview for a new SDR manager within our organization yesterday, and somebody presented that as the theme of their presentation around how they're going to run their team, was celebrating the small wins. And I loved it. I thought it was a really good way of looking at things. So Andy, I'll stick with you, let you go first on this one. Outside of that, is there anything else that you're seeing people do, or you're practicing that's working from a keeping people motivated perspective within your sales teams?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I'll talk from a perspective of the things that I see rather than my own sales team, because I think I have, I have the benefit there of working broadly with teams. I think this idea that I put it down to winning together and celebrating those wins together is more than just that best practice as well. What I would say is that there's almost there's two sort of scenarios, right? There's the sales team that wants everybody else to win, because they know that if their colleague wins, then it's another customer logo with more case studies, with more metrics, with more money going in the bank to go towards more go-to-market and more R&D. It also means that a competitor is probably not winning as well, right? I've worked, and I'm sure everyone resonates with this. I've worked in sales teams before where the culture is almost like they don't want someone else to win, because that means they're going to be almost like it's competitive for the wrong reasons, right? And so what I love to see is, and I've talked about this before, but it's worth saying again because it's such a wonderful thing. A former colleague of mine, Daniel Taylor, who said this thing once, which is everyone wants to win at this company we worked at, but they want to be number one, but whoever's number two to just be 1 pound behind them. And I think if we can, it's not necessarily a tactical answer to your question, but if we can cultivate that culture where everyone's motivated to win together, then you're going to get so much more motivation, because you kind of get, I don't know, everyone else on the panel, I would always be motivated, particularly as a competitive individual, by someone else doing well as well. So having that open communication where I can see what my peers are doing, it would push me forward as well.
Love that. Ali, I'll come to you next. Chris is busy making notes.
Yeah. I think, what Andy is saying is absolutely right. I think there is the element of culture there. I think that where we probably need to start taking this one step further is probably as leaders, is to really figure out how we celebrate those successes with our teams as well. So for us, when one person wins, everyone wins, and that really becomes a palpable feeling across the team, across the organization, whether using, communication tools like Slack or however you are communicating with the team, to really be able to celebrate those, because those opportunities can get missed very easily. And those are really the micro moments that build that motivation within the team. And motivation is not just an event or a specific tactic or a strategy. It really is people pulling together at the same time in the same direction, and getting everyone else to feel that that success for others as well as part of your team. And for me personally, when we talk about motivation, there are two elements to it. One that you can drive as a team, but it's also self-developed motivation as well. Is that if you've hired the right team, they will already feel motivated to go and do well as well. And I really think that if you start thinking and tracking back towards this, everything starts from your hiring mechanics, your methodology, the types of profiles that you're looking for to build your sales team around. If those are the people that you are hunting for, and you're really ruthless about that type of personality or individual that you're looking for, that will naturally and organically build, this group motivation that we always want to sense within our teams.
Love that. Chris, coming around to you. I feel like we could probably do an hour with this conversation. You guys are bringing out some gems here. It's fantastic.
Easily. I was writing down notes because obviously it's rare that I'm surrounded by such intelligent people. So it's important to capture it. But I think another smart person who I heard earlier on was talking about laughs correlating directly to results, which I thought was a great sentiment. But there's manufacturing those, and then there's just curating them. And I think find ways to connect your team in a way that's not slammed together, that feels like forced fun. I did a recent comedy night and a few drinks out in London. It just so happened that we turned up a bit late to the comedy club, and my entire team, other than me, had to sit on the front row and got abused for essentially 2 hours. I found a unique seat at the back, which was great, but I'm not joking you, that feeling afterwards of everyone's buzz actually just generated into another week's worth of fantastic activity, and it's memories as well. But I'm going to throw two last one positive, one contentious point into this mix to close off on. But I think I've always been a big believer in what you permit, you promote as a leader in terms of your behavior. And so I think Andy's point just then was, celebrate and share all wins and lift people up. You want to see the replicable work that people are doing in the positive way, even if it's just booking that meeting or landing that customer or closing a $50 million deal. Actually, they should be equitable because everyone has worked towards their goals. But don't celebrate weak wins. Really make sure they're purposeful. But the counter to this around permitting what you promote, and it's probably a bit of a downer to finish on, is that actually there's a real obligation of leaders to spot where there are potentially challenges within your organization that are detracting from positive progress. And realistically, that's a performance-based conversation. And I think like poor behavior in the workplace, kind of inspires and instigates other poor behavior. So, whilst you can have the benefit of raising the feel within the business, you can also detract from that by not acting on the right things to manage. And by that, I simply mean where poor performance or poor attitude are present, that's as important to manage out of the business as it is important to manage the positivity and growth of the others. So it's sadly something we've all probably had to face in our sales careers. It's something we should take seriously because it is addictive, where you can see others getting away with poor behavior. So I'll shut up there. Real downer. I'm sorry.
That is a fantastic point.
But yeah.
Brilliant point. I think it's important to highlight that because being in leadership isn't all about happy clappy, is it? Let's keep everybody motivated and be friends and create a nice environment. We have to walk out and do the tough stuff as well, and you can't have one without the both. And I think that's a very good reminder to end on. So I think we are due. James should be coming back on the stage now. Jeds, I'll say thank you very much for your contribution today. Thanks for joining us and for insights. Genuinely could have done another 20 minutes very easily. And have a great rest of the day, all three of you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you all.
Guys. Enjoy your day.